Imagine yourself stepping out of time, not into a battlefield, nor a bustling marketplace, but into stone corridors where silence itself was a way of life. The world you are about to enter is neither glamorous nor free, yet within its hushed halls, a different kind of power stirred quiet, hidden but enduring. Tonight, we travel not to a royal court or grand cathedral, but behind thick wooden doors into the cloistered world of a medieval nunnery. Here, young girls were given new names, new lives, and new identities, molded not by their own choosing, but by vows whispered in Latin and the slow, steady rhythm of candlelight and cold stone. This is not the story of saints, nor of martyrs, but of ordinary women bound to extraordinary discipline, of ink-stained parchment, unspoken resistance, and winter prayers that echoed through the years. Let yourself drift into their world now. You may find it more familiar than you expect. Your new name is Silence. You are 14, the age when some girls begin to dream of marriage, but not you, not anymore. Your feet crunch the frost on the convent path. It is winter, but there is no fire waiting for you. Only the dim, wavering glow of beeswax candle, and the creak of an old wooden door that groans like a tired soul. Your old name, whatever it was, is whispered one last time as your mother presses a cold kiss to your forehead. Then she turns away, because tears are not allowed here. Inside, the stone breathes a different kind of air, heavy with incense, aged parchment, and lye soap. A silence so full it feels like another presence in the room. The sisters do not greet you with smiles, but with nods, with folded hands, and a plain wool robe, still warm from the body of another novice. You are no longer a child. You are Sister Quietia, or Agnes, or Seraphina. It doesn't matter, because from this moment on, your name is not yours. Your voice is not yours. Your body is not yours. It belongs to God and to the rhythm of the nunnery. The days blur quickly. There is the bell. It rings 7 times a damatins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, and then again for compline. You rise before dawn, when the cold still lingers like a second skin. You do not speak, you do not laugh, you do not sing, at least not yet. The dormitory is one long stone room with wooden pallets arranged side by side. You sleep fully clothed, wrapped in the same rough-spun robe you wear by day. It itches, but to scratch would be vanity. Your feet learn to walk without sound on the chapel floors. Even your prayers are quiet-mouthed, but not voiced unless commanded. Meals are taken in silence. Only the oldest nun reads aloud from scripture as you chew stale bread and cabbage boiled to gray. Your hands are soon stained with ink. You are taught to copy manuscripts, to stitch, to wash linens, to keep the candles trimmed. You learn Latin, not through lessons, but by repetition, by reciting psalms until the syllables no longer have meaning. They are simply breath and rhythm, like the tide. The days are all the same, and that sameness is the point, because here, within these walls, time dissolves, desire dissolves. Even memory begins to thin at the edges, but not for everyone, not for you. At night, beneath wool blankets, stiff with old sweat, you remember your sister's laughter, the way spring smelled after rain in your father's orchard, the feel of sun on your back as you climbed trees. Barefoot, you were not meant to live this life. but someone decided you would. Perhaps it was a dowry too high, a brother who needed the inheritance more, or a father who believed cloistered life was safest for a girl with too much imagination. So here you are. Your world is made of rules, silence, scripture, and shadows that stretch long across the courtyard. Stones, and yet somewhere between the turning of the psalter pages, the trimming of lamp wicks, the memorization of verses you never asked to learn, a strange kind of peace begins to settle in you. Not joy, not freedom, but stillness, a stillness deep enough to hear your own thoughts again, to feel something stir beneath the silence. It is not rebellion, not yet, but the silence is not empty. It waits, like breath held before a song, and somewhere deeper in the nunnery, in the heart of its oldest chamber, a woman writes music the church will not approve, and dreams visions that will never be spoken aloud, except in secret. And that is where we go next, to meet the abbess who refused to stay silent. Life within the quiet walls, you begin to forget what the outside world sounds like. The sound of hooves on stone, the laughter from nearby streets, the lively voices of marketplace gatherings, all of it fades. Bit by bit, it is replaced by the quiet rhythm of daily routines, the soft rustle of robes on ancient stone floors, the hum of verses spoken in an old tongue, the quiet click of beads passed through fingers of those who've long stopped asking why they remain. You do not cry, not because you're fearless, but because tears do not serve a purpose here. Emotion is seen as a ripple in a still pond, and stillness is considered a virtue. This place was built centuries ago, its stones darkened by time, its wooden beams creaking from age. There are no mirrors, only the reflections in the eyes of others, weathered faces etched with patience. You wonder if you'll resemble them someday, or if your softness will be worn away before then. Every action has a rule: how to move, when to bow, how to hand an object without touch, a gesture shaped by long-standing caution, even in its gentlest forms. You speak only when addressed, and even then with lowered gaze. Work and contemplation guide your life now, not merely words, but a rhythm, like the bell that tolls through stone walls. Its voice becomes your measure of time, carving your days into calm intervals, not marked by season or delight, but by purpose. At first, you wonder if peace lives here. Some of the elders move with grace, their breathing a kind of quiet prayer, but others hold their tokens too tightly. Their eyes avoid yours. Not everyone arrived by choice. Some once had families, others were sent away, some simply had nowhere else to turn. You begin to learn their stories, not through words, but through gestures and quiet kindness. A small gift left at your bedside, a gentle lesson shared through silence, a memory offered without speech. There is one who never speaks at meals, perhaps a personal vow, perhaps her way of remembering. No one asks. Some things are allowed to rest in shadow, unspoken, but not unnoticed. Beyond the walls, life continues. You see traces of it when food is left at the gate, or when distant bells ring out of sync with your own. But that world is no longer yours. Your hair, once brushed by your mother's hand, is now hidden beneath a simple veil, a symbol of devotion and of letting go. You spend your days in a quiet room, surrounded by paper and ink. There, your hands find purpose, preserving stories in gold and color. Each page a small act of beauty, a gentle rebellion against the plainness of life. You sometimes add a detail to fine, a design to alive, a tiny creature, a hidden flower. No one says anything, but once the matron pauses, her eyes resting on a bird you've drawn. She turns the page without a word, and somehow that speaks volumes. You wonder, did she once imagine herself in another world? Did she once run through sunlit fields, or taste sweet cakes made with care? You don't ask, but the question stays. Your thoughts become companions. You learn to let them drift, not to escape, but to remain. You realize the stillness is not only in the stones, it's within, a space of retreat, a quiet order that holds both comfort and restraint. And sometimes, before the sun rises, when frost makes lace on the window glass, you hear something within the hush, not quite a voice, but a vibration, a hidden note beneath the world. You do not mention it, not yet, but you'll soon learn. Of another, a girl who once heard the same. She was not ignored, she could not be, and her words still echo. Time here does not move forward. It sinks like a pebble through still water, slow, steady, sacred. You lose track of seasons. The garden grows what is needed: lavender, herbs, and remedies, things for healing, things for remembering. Your body changes. It slows with the rhythm of this place. There are no clocks, only the bell. Its sound becomes a guide, telling you when to move, when to rest. There is no chaos, no interruption, just the sound of your own breath and the quiet between words. You come to understand why the elders rarely flinch. They are not untouched by feeling. They have simply learned to live inside it. You are no longer the girl who arrived, but she remains in the curves you draw, in the margins, in the notes you hide in empty pages, in the songs you hum while sweeping the floor. You begin to feel something deeper. That silence has layers. Some are still, some are waiting, but some burn with unspoken fire. And one day you will hear about a girl, long ago, in a place like this. She too saw more than was allowed. She too heard something beneath the quiet. And though she was told to hush, she left behind a melody that still plays today. Hildegard of Bingen's secret visions theme, the prophetic abbess who defied the church through music, mysticism, and divine vision. Imagine now that we are farther along the same cloistered path, but not in silence, not entirely, because in one convent, on a wooded hill in what is now Germany, there was once a girl who heard things no one else could hear. She was born in 1098, a sickly 10th child in a noble family, and as was custom for such a child, she was promised to the church before her memories had even begun to form. At the age of 8, Hildegard of Bingen entered a life of enclosure, not simply behind monastery walls, but within a stone anchorage, sealed beside a woman named Jutta, an ascetic who was revered for her holiness and harsh devotion. For decades, Hildegard lived in this austere shadow, praying, studying, observing the world only through glimpses, as if through stained glass, patterned, filtered, sacred. And yet, even as a child, she heard something beneath the silence, a resonance. She would later call it the living light, not a metaphor, not a poetic phrase, but a literal experience, a radiant force that filled her mind with visions, shapes, colors, sounds, and messages. Hildegard kept these visions private for many years. She feared judgment, condemnation, or worse that they were not divine at all, but delusions. But the visions did not stop. In fact, as she grew older, they intensified, until finally she could no longer keep them hidden. It was in her early 40s, an age when many women of the time were fading into invisibility, that Hildegard began to write. Her first work was called Civias, short for Know the Ways of the Lord. It was a book of visions, not random images, but vast theological tapestries, complete with vibrant illustrations and poetic prose. She described the creation of the cosmos, the fall of humanity, and the return to divine order through wisdom. Her language was complex, her metaphors rich. She wrote of the soul as a green flame, of divine femininity as a cosmic embrace. And what's more, she claimed these visions were not her own. They came from God. This was controversial. The Church did not easily accept prophetic women, especially those who spoke not in submission, but with clarity, authority, and poetic brilliance. So Hildegard did something unusual. She wrote to the Pope, and the Pope Eugene III read her visions aloud before an assembly of clergy. What happened next was remarkable. Instead of silencing her, they gave her permission to write more. Some say it was because her visions aligned with orthodox teachings. Others say the beauty of her language was too persuasive to ignore. But whatever the reason, Hildegard was allowed to speak, and she did. She wrote music, unlike anything heard in her time, soaring, mystical, feminine in tone. While most chant was low, repetitive, and monotone, Hildegard's music reached upward. It felt less like a march and more like flight. She composed dozens of hymns, odes to saints, to divine light, to the Virgin Mary, each one shimmering with strange, ethereal melody. Today, her compositions are still sung, still recorded, still meditated upon. When you listen to them, even now, you can hear the sense of something not quite of this world, a celestial yearning, soft yet immense. But Hildegard was not only a visionary or composer, she was also a physician, a herbalist, a philosopher. She wrote texts on the natural world, documenting plants, stones, and human ailments with sensitivity and observation centuries ahead of her time. In her mind, body and soul were not separate. They danced together, intertwined. She spoke of viriditas, a Latin word meaning greenness, which she used as a metaphor for vitality, spiritual growth, divine aliveness. To Hildegard, everything pulsed with sacred energy, even herbs, even illness, even the music she heard in her mind while others slept, and she did not remain cloistered forever. Later in life, she founded her own convent. She corresponded with kings, bishops, and emperors, and perhaps most surprisingly, she scolded them. She wrote letters filled with warning, chastisement, reminders of spiritual duty and humility, and they listened, because something about Hildegard's presence, her unwavering conviction, her refusal to be small, commanded attention. Even when she was old and ill, she continued to write, to compose, to dream. When local clergy forbade her from burying an excommunicated man in the convent cemetery, she resisted. She buried him anyway. She said she'd been commanded to by divine vision. And when they placed her convent under interdict, a kind of spiritual quarantine, she argued with reason, scripture, and boldness. Eventually, they relented, because she was not just a woman with visions. she was a force. When Hildegard died in 1179, she was in her 80s, a rare age for any person then, let alone a woman who had battled sickness her entire life. It's said that on the night she passed, 2 streams of light crossed the sky above the convent, silent, golden. Whether this is true or not, it is fitting, because Hildegard lived as a light that refused to go out. Even now, centuries later, her voice still echoes in vaulted chapels, in dusty manuscripts, in quiet playlists played while others sleep. She was, in many ways, what silence becomes when it chooses to sing as the light dims again. We return to the nunnery, not as you found it, but as Hildegard helped shape it. Beneath its obedience, a current of music. Beneath its silence, a choir of thought. And deeper still, a garden where leaves whisper secrets no one dares write down. Which is where we go next. To the hidden places where nuns passed on knowledge too delicate, too forbidden for the official record. The garden of forgotten plants waits for us, and it is not what you think. You sit in your narrow wooden chair, candlelight trembling along the curved wall, and you wonder, what was it like to see inner visions, not only in sleep, but during waking hours? What did it mean to hear music from beyond when others heard only bells? You think of Hildegard, centuries behind us now, yet her voice, her writings, still linger like echoes. They say she saw the soul as a spinning wheel of light, a harmony of brilliance and shadow, something ancient that had nearly forgotten it came from the stars. In your quiet moments, you wonder if perhaps you've seen something like that too, not in fire, but in the soft edges of dreams, in the way certain prayers leave behind a sweetness in the air, like early lavender blooming in frost. Hildegard didn't fit the mold of her time. She wrote with a voice that felt ancient and new, a language of stars and roots, of winged beings and vibrations that stirred the bones of the cosmos. She was called many names: visionary, scribe, wise one, a woman born before her era. Yet she walked with care, her words wrapped in reverence, even when they carried deep meaning. She said what others could not, speaking of Sophia, wisdom with a feminine face, not as metaphor, but as presence. She described the divine not only as Father, but as light, as breath, as the green vitality rising through every tree. She honored the gentle not as weakness, but as a strength. In doing so, she gave permission to those like you to wonder again, does the soul have curves? Does heaven have gardens? Hildegard also saw imbalance, not as blame, but as disharmony. To her, a person was a constellation, body, spirit, feelings, breath, and will, each a note in a living song. When the harmony broke, the body ached, so she offered song and plants and compassion as paths to restoration. She documented herbs, verbena, mugwort, rose, fennel, wormwood, not just as tools, but as living companions, messengers of earth and light. She believed in beauty, not only in architecture, but in a leaf trembling with dew, or a melody that fades too soon. In her letters, she once called herself a feather on the breath of God, not a leader, not a saint, just something carried. It is this softness, this strength through surrender, that made her visions endure. She wasn't trying to command, she was trying to listen. You begin to see, silence wasn't her boundary, it was her vessel, her waiting place, the quiet where vision found her. When it came, she composed. Her melodies rose like spirals, like mist from sacred earth. And when her sisters sang them, even the air in the chapel shimmered. They were not permitted power in the usual ways, but in her songs they felt as if they had wings. You imagine it now, a convent under moonlight, frost lacing the windows, voices rising not from duty, but as offering, music woven into the stone, into every touch that cared for the sick, into each brush of ink and cloth. When she founded her own sanctuary, she made sure her sisters were taught and seen and uplifted. She composed a sacred play, the first of its kind, every role sung by women. Only one character, the one who disrupts harmony, remained silent, because Hildegard believed that voice was not his to claim. To her, melody was a divine language, sound carrying light. She passed with a pen still in her hand, a vision not yet finished, a note still forming, but her song continued, copied in hidden rooms, whispered across time, surviving fire, war, and silence. Even now, some speak her name not as history, but as inheritance, and you, in your own sanctuary, find her again. You copy her lines with reverent hand. I saw a great mountain the color of iron, and upon it stood a white cloud, and from that cloud came a voice. You pause, not because you do not understand, but because you do. You've seen that mountain, somewhere between prayer and sleep, and in that moment you are not alone. You are a feather, too carried on a breath, unseen, yet almost felt. Hildegard's visions live on, in silence, in song, in the quiet power passed, from hand to hand. And soon you'll walk to the garden, not the main one, but the hidden one, where sisters gather by moonlight, where plants that have no names still remember. The garden of forgotten plants is waiting. Its soil holds the memory. But for now, rest. Let the music of her life move gently through you, like light through old parchment. You are still in silence, but now you know what lives there. The garden of forgotten plants. You didn't realize time was passing. Stone crumbles slowly, but not always where you can see. Abbeys are built, then erased, then remembered again. But somewhere high in a cloistered monastery, atop forgotten hills, a small manuscript rests quietly beneath dust, older than your great-grandmother's prayers. The gold still shimmers faintly in the candlelight, and the vines, inked along the margins, still bloom, as if the hands that drew them had only just left the room. It is Scivia's Hildegard's first book of visions. The title lingers in your mind like breath on glass. Know the ways, not rules, not consequences, but ways, movements of soul, gravity of spirit, maps of divine inner structure, drawn without stepping beyond the garden wall. Hildegard never went far, but she listened deeper than most. Others called her dangerous or divine, but to the women who knelt beside her in chapel silence, she was simply mother, not by rank, but by resonance. She accepted her veil, but not invisibility. She took vows, but never let them silence her wonder. And in a world that taught women to lower their eyes, she looked straight upward and saw light. You imagine it now as you copy her verses by dim candlelight, the page whispering beneath your hand. You trace a vine along the margin, wondering if her fingers moved like yours once did, deliberate, aching, hopeful. She wrote that the cosmos was a womb. Creation was not command, it was gestation. And so the soul, like a child, began in darkness and then emerged into song. You don't claim to understand her, but you feel her, in the way your silence no longer feels hollow, in the moments between bells where music almost arises on its own. She wrote, "O vis eternitatis, O power within eternity." Her voice rose like ivy, not loud but unstoppable, and she didn't scream her revelations. She hummed them, even now, centuries later. Somewhere beyond these cloistered walls, a musician sets her melodies to light. A herbalist studies her notes on healing plants. A seeker whispers her name, not as a relic, but as a frequency. And you begin to dream differently. Just the other night, you dreamed of a garden, not the one with leeks and lavender, but a hidden orchard full of books, where each fruit contained a song. You bit into one, and a choir burst forth. Inside your chest, you woke, not afraid, but softened, and you understood, in some quiet way, what it might have felt like to see what Hildegard once saw, to know that even stone vibrates, even moonlight sings, even plants hold ancient memory in their stems, and especially that women cloistered or forgotten are not blank pages. They are instruments of something sacred. You pause in your copying, a breath, a flutter of something at the edge of perception, and then a shift, not sound, but a beckoning, not a voice, but a pull. You rise slowly, robe whispering along the floor, past the hallway, past the cracked font in the old chapel, past the scriptorium where echoes still linger, toward the garden, but not the one you know. This one is hidden, wild, veiled by time, and outside of any abbess's ledger. They call it the Garden of Forgotten Plants. And as you step through its arched gate of mossed stone, something greets you, a scent like memory, a hush like prayer, and a knowing older than the church, older than doctrine, older even than the stars your ancestors watched from mountaintop fires. The soil beneath your feet is alive, it remembers. And tonight, so do you, not with facts, not with names, but with your breath, because you are part of this lineage, a song, a silence, a rebellion written in soft roots and sacred vines. Rest. Now, let the candle burn low. Let Hildegard's hum cradle you into dream. You are still within the cloister, but the world within you blooms. You walk barefoot, the stone floor cool beneath your soles, moving deeper into the quiet part of the cloister, the part where no rules are posted, but all are obeyed. There is a wooden door, weathered smooth by centuries of passing hands. Opens without resistance, and beyond it, a garden, not the tidy medicinal plot near the main hall, with calendula and mint labeled in neat script. No, this one is older, unkempt, alive in a different way. It hums. This is not a place for official instruction. Here, plants grow by intuition. A cypress leans sideways. Lavender twists itself through stone. A vine you do not recognize curls gently around a statue of Saint Apollonia, her marble lips cracked with moss. There are no novices here, only the elder sisters, tending in silence. You are not invited, not exactly, but you are not turned away either. One sister nods to you, her apron stained with crushed leaves, her sleeves rolled up, hands gentle as she presses a poultice against the bark of an old apple tree, as though healing it were no different from healing flesh. You have entered what the outside world would never imagine, a sanctuary of forbidden knowledge, not forbidden by violence, but by forgetting. Here, women remember what others have dismissed. The uses of mugwort, not just for digestion, but for dreaming. The timing of red clover harvest, according to the moon's tilt. The preparation of violet honey for fevers that medicine cannot name. They do not write it down. Not anymore. Not since the bishop burned the last copy of the Sisters' Manual of Earthly Healing, declaring it heretical, to pagan, to feminine, to alive. But the sisters remember, they do not need ink, they have breath. Each night, by dim candlelight, one of them speaks a recipe aloud. Never the same recipe twice in a row. Memory, not manuscript, is the vessel now. You learn by repetition, you learn by doing. You learn that comfrey is for broken bones, that rosemary drives out melancholy, that rue handled improperly can punish, but handled with care. It opens doors in the mind. You are warned not to use it without guidance, and you obey. The garden is not only herbal, it is spiritual. Each plant here is part of a taxonomy of experience. There are herbs for grief, for nightmares, for the terrible silence that sometimes settles over the soul like snow. You are told never to harvest belladonna unless the moon is dark. You are told not to speak certain plants' names aloud at night, not because the sisters are superstitious, but because names have weight, and some things prefer to sleep undisturbed. You are given your first task: tend to the chamomile bed. At first, it seems simple, but you soon learn that chamomile thrives when spoken to gently, that it opens more fully if harvested just after vespers, when the air is heavy with the sound of evening chants. Sister Breda, the oldest among them, once leaned close and whispered, "If you tend the chamomile without peace in your heart, it will close its petals in protest." You thought it was poetic until the day your thoughts wandered in anger and the blooms refused to open. There is a tree in the garden. No one knows its name. Its bark peels in fine curls, its leaves fragrant like lemon and smoke. It does not appear in any official codex, not in Galen, not in Pliny, not in Hildegard's own Physica. But the sisters know what it does. When someone is near death, they boil the bark into a tea, not to save the body, but to ease the passage, to call the soul gently home. They do not call this magic, they call it mercy. Over time, you begin to feel something shift in you, not dramatically, not suddenly, but like a cup being slowly filled. You begin to know things without being told. Which herb to touch when fear visits, how long to steep the marigold in oil to draw out its fire. You no longer need to ask. The garden itself begins to teach you, and you begin to understand. This is not just knowledge, this is legacy. Knowledge passed in secrecy, because the world does not trust women who can heal without permission. Sometimes a traveling friar comes asking for balm for a rash or syrup for a cough. The sisters provide it with courtesy, with obedience, but they do not offer him the whole garden, not because they are selfish, but because the friar does not listen. He collects knowledge the way bees collect pollen, but he forgets to make honey, and honey is the point. One night, Sister Ellen wakes you gently. She takes your hand, leads you out under the stars. You enter the garden again, this time to a corner you've never seen. There, half covered in ivy, is a small box carved from alder wood. She opens it. Inside, a single page of parchment, old, stained, but intact. The song of the wound healing, Sisters, a chant, not Latin, not German, a language of syllables meant only to be sung. You do not ask how it survived. Some things you are learning are better left unspoken. And then ... there are the dreams. After enough time in the garden, you begin to dream not of people, but of plants, fields of blue flowers singing in harmony, a root curling into the shape of an ear, whispering a secret, a tree growing upside down, its fruit inside the earth. You tell no one, but one morning, Sister Brita smiles at you and says, "You've started dreaming in green. Good, that is all. This is what the outside world never saw. Not the obedience, not the veils, not the bells, but this slow, feminine science, this sacred remembering, a theology written in petals, a prayer whispered into soil, a spell in the shape of a recipe." You realize now the nunnery was not just a place of restriction. It was also a vault, a womb, a place where knowledge could survive by hiding in plain sight. And still, the garden grows, every season, something new, or something ancient returning, something once lost, now blooming again. You carry the scent of it with you, on your sleeves, in your skin, and one day, far from here, you will meet someone sick in spirit, and you will reach into your memory and offer them not just help, but remembrance, because healing was never about control, it was about listening. And while the sisters tended their plants in silence, the bishops feasted. You've heard the rumors, you've seen the gifts sent from noblemen, you've noticed the letters arriving sealed in wax, the color of blood. Beyond the convent walls, a different kind of power played its game. Velvet robes, golden rings, political marriages arranged in whispers over roasted goose. This is where we turn now, to the world of velvet cloaks and veiled ambitions, where church and crown meet behind closed doors, and piety is traded for influence. The bishop's table waits, and the silence here is of a very different kind. You step lightly through the garden's hidden gate, the rusted iron cool beneath your fingertips, and the soft earth yielding beneath your boots. The air here is thick with stories, not the spoken kind, but the ones that settle like pollen. In the breath, each plant holds memory, some of healing, some of pain, some of secrets, too fragile to be shared in daylight. The garden's layout is labyrinthine, hawthorn, where the sunlight filters like dust in a cathedral. Here, every leaf and root has a purpose, not just practical, but spiritual. You kneel to brush away dead leaves from a bed of time. Its pungent scent rises sharply. You breathe deeply. You learn this herb is not only for digestion, but for courage. An elder sister watches you with eyes like chipped glass, sharp and knowing. She offers you a small bundle of dried lavender, tied with flax thread. For your dreams, she says softly. Accept it reverently. You do not ask how she knows your dreams are restless. Some knowledge is felt, not spoken. Later, you hold the bundle beneath your pillow. The rhythm of the seasons. In spring, the first shoots of wild garlic pierce the soil, a promise of renewal beneath the frost. In summer, the air hums with bees drawn to clover and honeysuckle, their labor a quiet chorus of sweetness. In autumn, the branches bend heavy, with hips and berries, and the soil holds the scent of decay and promise. A cycle, endless, invisible, perfect. Winter is quieter, but still, under frozen ground, life stirs. Roots drink deep, in darkness. You are taught how to prepare salves and tinctures. The steps are precise, almost ritual. Dry with care, store in earthenware pots sealed with wax. There is a gentle urgency in the work, an understanding that these remedies are more than medicine. They are prayers, physical acts of hope. You learn the language of plants is subtle. The snap of a stem, the curve of a leaf, the way a flower turns toward the sun or hides in shade. You notice that some plants seem to react to your presence. Chamomile opens wider when you hum a soft tune. Rue shrinks from your touch unless handled with reverence. Companion, at times, the garden feels like a mirror. Your moods echo in the rustle of leaves. Your fears are carried away by the breeze. Your hope blossoms in hidden corners. It is here, in these quiet moments, that you find solace. Weight of silence presses too hard when the cold creeps through the stone walls. The garden offers refuge. The knowledge here is ancient, some of it passed down from Hildegard herself, whose writings on herbs and healing were as revolutionary as her music. But much is older still, whispered stories from the forests, secrets handed from mother to daughter. This is a feminine wisdom rooted in earth and spirit, resilient despite centuries of erasure. You begin to understand that the garden's true power lies not just in its plants, but in its silence, a silence that holds memory. And as you tend the garden, you become part of this living legacy. Soon, the scent of wood smoke drifts on the air. You hear faint laughter and the clinking of glasses. Beyond the garden walls, another world unfolds, one of velvet cloaks, gilded halls, and whispered alliances. The bishop's table, a world of light and shadow, power and secrecy, where the prayers of the cloister are but a distant echo. And so, with a gentle breath, you leave the garden behind. The heavy oak door closes softly, and the silence changes. You find yourself stepping more slowly now, each breath drawing in the earthy scent of moss and wet bark, your fingers brushing the soft fuzz of sage leaves, a delicate shiver passing through the garden's quiet pulse. The stone walls enclosing this hidden sanctuary rise around you, draped with ivy and the creeping tendrils of wild clematis, softening the hard edges of centuries. You notice the subtle colors here, not just green, but the muted gold of dried yarrow, the pale lavender of blooming self-heal, the deep burgundy of elderberries, ripening silently in the shade. This is a place where time moves differently, where the passing seasons are measured not by clocks, but by the unfolding of petals, the bending of stems, and the whispered footsteps of those who came before. You kneel beside a low stone basin, still half full of rainwater and scattered rose petals, the faint fragrance lingering like a gentle prayer. Sister Mara joins you, her hands weathered but careful, as she gathers sprigs of lemon balm, explaining in a soft murmur how this herb calms troubled hearts and eases the restless spirit. Her voice is steady, each word deliberate, as though speaking in rhythm with the garden itself. She tells you stories not written, but woven into the fabric of their lives, of the soul, a poultice of comfrey for broken bones, a tea of rose petals to soothe the fevered mind, a tincture of St. John's wort for shadows that fall at dusk, when to gather the herbs so their power is strongest at dawn, as the first light touches the earth, or in the waning moon, when the air is thick with mystery. You listen to the subtle signs, the rustle of leaves, the dance of light on dew. the whisper of wind through the branches. Each moment is a prayer, each act of harvesting and offering. You discover that the garden itself is a teacher, guiding your hands, opening your senses. There is a quiet reverence here for the unseen, the roots reaching deep into the soil, the insects that pollinate with silent diligence, the unseen spirits that dwell among the leaves. The sisters speak softly of these presences, not as superstition, but as part of a living tradition, a way of honoring the fullness of creation, person between earth and soul. And in that conversation, there is grace. Sometimes you find yourself sitting quietly beneath the arching boughs of an ancient yew, its dark needles whispering secrets you cannot yet understand. Life beneath your fingertips. In these moments, the garden feels like a sanctuary of stillness, a refuge from the demands of the cloistered world. It is here that you begin to understand the true power of the garden, not as a place of control, but as a place of surrender. The knowledge carried here is fragile and fierce. It is a knowledge that has survived wars, persecutions, the relentless march of time, and it lives in you now, in the way you touch the leaves, in the way you remember the songs of the plants. Harvest the bundle heavy with promise. You feel the weight of history in your palms, the breath of countless sisters who tended these same beds, whose prayers still linger in the soil. And though the world outside may never know, you carry a secret, a sacred inheritance. But beyond these walls, the world moves differently. The velvet-draped chambers of bishops and kings are filled with schemes and silver spoons. Prayers of the cloister are but whispers, and power is measured in feasts and favors. The bishop's table awaits, and the silence there's a silence of its own kind. The garden breathes softly under the early morning mist. Drops cling to spiderwebs like tiny jewels, and the air is cool, heavy with the promise of new life. You step carefully along a moss-lined path, each footfall muffled by fallen leaves and soft earth. The scent of damp stone mingles with wild thyme and rosemary, and somewhere nearby, water trickles from a cracked stone fountain, its gentle murmur a quiet song. The light is delicate here, filtered through a canopy of leaves, dappled and shifting. Like a slow-moving dream, you reach a small clearing where wild violets bloom in clusters, their purple faces turned modestly toward the sun. Sister Agnes kneels among them, gathering petals with practiced hands. She speaks in a low voice about the violet's power to soothe fevered heads, to calm turbulent thoughts. Her words fall like soft rain, and you listen, feeling the pulse of her care in every movement. Thereby, a patch of valerian root sends up delicate pink blossoms. The sisters call it the sleep bringer. When brewed as tea, it offers rest to those troubled by nightmares, a balm for the weary soul. You watch as Sister Breda prepares a small bundle to dry by the fire, her fingers steady and sure despite the years etched upon her hands. The garden is alive with stories. Each plant holds a chapter in the book of healing, written not in ink, but in the texture of leaves, the curve of petals, the warmth of roots pressed between palms. You begin to see how this knowledge forms a tapestry, a secret language passed in gestures, in silence, in the tender rhythm of tending. You learn of the sacred calendar. Certain herbs are harvested only on specific days when the moon is full or when particular stars align. These timings are more than superstition. They are an understanding of the subtle energies that move through the world, an ancient dance of light and shadow, of growth and rest. You practice patience, learning to wait for the right moment, to pick the rose hips just as their color deepens to crimson, to gather the elderflowers before dawn breaks when their scent is most potent. Each act of harvesting is a prayer, a silent offering to the earth's quiet generosity. There is a sacredness in these rituals, a reverence that transcends the physical. The garden is not merely a source of cures, but a sanctuary of spirit. You feel its power ripple through your hands, a gentle current connecting you to the sisters who came before, to Hildegard's vision of a cosmos alive with breath and song. Sometimes, when the world feels heavy, you sit beneath the ancient hawthorn tree, its twisted branches sheltering you like a guardian. Here, in the hush of the leaves, you find a place where time slows to a whisper. The garden becomes a mirror, reflecting the hidden places within you, the quiet hope, the patient endurance. You sense that healing is not a destination, but a journey, a weaving of earth and spirit, of knowledge and mystery. And in this weaving, you find a kind of freedom, a freedom born not of grand gestures, but of small, tender acts of care. As twilight falls, the garden hums softly with the sound of night insects, and the scent of jasmine rises like a benediction. You gather your tools, your bundle of herbs, and step back through the gate, the iron cool once more beneath your fingers. Behind you, the garden breathes in silence, a secret world alive beneath stone walls. Outside the garden's calm embrace, the world turns toward power and display. The bishop's table calls, where velvet robes brush against polished floors, and whispered deals carry weight beyond prayer. But for now, you carry the garden with you, its quiet strength, its healing breath, and the promise that even in silence, life finds a way to grow. The bishop's table, churchmen and their veiled games theme, the political, social, and luxurious life of medieval bishops, a world of strategy, influence, and quiet intrigue behind the prayers. Imagine yourself standing just outside the grand stone cathedral, its towering spires reaching upward, casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. Inside, the air is thick with incense. Heavy velvet tapestries mute the sound of footsteps, and crystal chandeliers scatter light like fractured stars. Here, the world feels different, where the cloistered nuns speak only in silence. The bishops converse in whispers and veiled glances. The bishop's table is not merely a place to eat. It is a stage where alliances are forged, where favors are bought and sold, where the future of kingdoms and churches is shaped with subtle words and measured smiles. Gold-trimmed robes rustle softly, silver goblets catch the flickering candlelight, and the scent of roasted meats and spiced wine fills the great hall. Bishops dine, surrounded by opulence, rich tapestries depicting saints and battles, ornate wooden chairs carved with intricate patterns, and heavy oak tables laden with delicacies unavailable to the common folk. Feasts last for hours, interspersed with music, poetry, and sometimes quiet negotiation. Each guest understands the unspoken rules. Power here is wielded not with sword or shout, but with subtlety. A glance holds meaning. A pause can be a threat, a compliment, a promise. Bishops serve as both spiritual leaders and political strategists. their influence stretches beyond the church into the courts of kings and nobles. Their decisions ripple through the lives of peasants, merchants, and clergy alike. Yet, beneath the surface of this grandeur, there is a constant game of vigilance. Rivalries simmer quietly. Ambitions hide behind polite conversation. Trust is measured and often scarce. Bishops carefully guard their positions, balancing loyalty to Rome with local power struggles and the expectations of their flocks. You can almost hear the whispered deals behind closed doors, appointments, land grants, ecclesiastical disputes negotiated over wine and roasted game. Some bishops are patrons of the arts and education, sponsoring the construction of cathedrals and monasteries, funding the copying of manuscripts and the training of clergy. Others are more concerned with wealth and influence, their lavish lifestyles sometimes drawing criticism, even from within the church. The contrast with the life inside the nunnery is stark. While nuns rise before dawn for prayer and labor, the bishop's day might begin with a sumptuous breakfast, followed by audiences with nobles and merchants. Where nuns work quietly in scriptoria, infirmaries, and gardens, bishops command armies of servants, clerks, and advisors, and yet both are part of the same vast, complex institution. You might imagine a bishop reclining in his velvet chamber, reading a letter sealed with the mark of a distant king, plotting alliances that will shape borders and beliefs, or perhaps negotiating a truce between rival factions, the weight of nations resting lightly on his polished desk. Despite their power, bishops also face challenges. The politics of the church are intricate and often perilous. The papacy's reach is long but sometimes contested. Local lords may resist ecclesiastical authority, and reformers whisper warnings of corruption and excess. Within this world, a bishop must navigate carefully, balancing faith, ambition, and survival. As night falls, the great hall fills with candlelight. The feast winds down. Guests exchange polite farewells and step into waiting carriages, leaving behind empty goblets and scattered crumbs. Silence returns to the stone corridors. Meanwhile, in the cloister, the nuns prepare for night prayers. The scent of herbs from the garden lingers faintly on the air, a reminder of quiet strength and resilience. Two worlds, one institution, each shaped by very different rhythms. You reflect on the contrast, the veiled games of velvet and gold, and the soft rebellion of silence and soil. Both are part of the story, a story of power, faith, and the human spirit. And as you close your eyes, you carry these images with you, letting the quiet strength of the garden and the distant glow of the bishop's table weave gently into your dreams. The great hall is vast and echoing, its vaulted ceilings rising like the ribs of some ancient beast, and the stone walls lined with tapestries thick with stories. You feel the weight of centuries here, of ceremonies performed and secrets kept. As you step inside, the flicker of hundreds of candles casts dancing shadows, and the scent of burning frankincense mingles with the rich aroma of spiced meats. The bishops gather here, arrayed in sumptuous robes, velvet trimmed with fur, embroidered with gold thread, jewels glinting in the soft candlelight. They are men of faith and ambition, stewards of a vast institution that stretches from the smallest village to distant kingdoms. Their voices are low, measured, each word chosen with care, for the smallest phrase can shift alliances. open doors, or close them forever. Around the long, polished oak table, plates piled high with roast venison, freshly baked bread, and seasonal fruits, goblets overflow with windy, red, and fragrant. The meal is not merely sustenance, it is ceremony, each course punctuated by toasts and quiet conversations, discussions of politics, land disputes, and the latest news from Rome. Here, bishops are patrons and power brokers. Their influence shapes not only church doctrine, but the very fabric of medieval society. They grant lands, confirm titles, intervene in disputes between nobles, and sometimes even call armies to war. Their hands may be stained with ink, but also with the unseen blood of those caught in their struggles. Behind polished smiles and courteous gestures, there are rivalries that simmer like embers beneath the hearth. Bishops vie for favor from the Pope, for the right to appoint loyal clerics, for influence over royal courts. Each maneuver is subtle, a glance exchanged, a carefully placed word, a gift sent with impeccable timing. The wealth displayed here is staggering. Fine linens, silver candlesticks, tapestries imported from far lands, books bound in leather and gold leaf. Yet this opulence stands in stark contrast to the austerity demanded of the faithful below, the peasants, the monks, and especially the cloistered nuns, who live lives of silence, labor, and prayer. The bishop's world is a stage of performance, ceremonies designed to inspire awe and reinforce their divine authority. Processions through candlelit halls, the tolling of great bells, the solemn reading of decrees, all crafted to remind the people and themselves that their power is ordained. Yet power is never without its precariousness. Whispers of reform ripple through the church. Critics speak of corruption and excess. Calls for simplicity and return to spiritual purity grow louder. Bishops must navigate these turbulent waters carefully, balancing their worldly ambitions with their sacred duties. In the private chambers behind the feast hall, maps and letters spread across heavy tables. Plans are drawn and alliances forged. The fate of kingdoms, the wealth of dioceses, all hinge on these quiet, unseen decisions. As evening deepens, the hall slowly empties. The candles burn low. The last notes of a lute drift through the corridors. Outside, the moon casts a pale light over the sleeping town. Within the stone walls of the cloister, the nuns begin their night prayers, their voices soft, their lives a gentle counterpoint to the power plays beyond. Two worlds exist side by side, one of whispered schemes and lavish banquets, one of silent devotion and hidden gardens, both shaping history in ways seen and unseen. And as you settle into the quiet of the night, you carry the memory of both. The velvet-clad bishops with their veiled games, and the women in silence, tending the earth and spirit alike. Together, they weave the complex tapestry of medieval life. The evening deepens, and the great hall takes on a softer glow. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows that dance along the tapestry's scenes of saints, battles, and divine miracles frozen in thread. The bishops recline comfortably, their voices lowered to tones that ripple like velvet over stone. Behind the polished veneer of piety and ceremony, a quieter drama unfolds. In secluded chambers adjacent to the feast hall, heavy oak doors close behind trusted advisors. Here, Maps marked with colored pins and seals are spread wide, charting lands, allegiances, and contested territories. Letters from distant rulers, sealed with wax, stamped in elaborate crests, lie alongside detailed ledgers of church holdings and tithes collected. The bishop and his closest council engage in careful negotiation. Each phrase is measured, each nod calculated. They discuss appointments to parishes, securing loyal priests in strategic locations. They weigh the benefits of supporting one noble faction over another. These are decisions with consequences, reaching far beyond the walls, influencing harvests, tax burdens, even the tides of conflict. Despite the outward display of unity, the Church is a web of competing interests. Bishops guard their domains jealously, navigating not only politics, but delicate theological debates. Some advocate for reform and stricter discipline, while others resist change, invested in maintaining their privileges. The lavishness of the feast stands as a testament to the Church's earthly power. Platters arrive laden with roasted game pheasant, boar, and venison glazed with honey and herbs. Bowls hold freshly baked breads, cheeses, and seasonal fruits. Spiced wine flows freely, its warmth easing tensions and encouraging conviviality. Yet, beneath the surface of mirth and ceremony, ambition simmers like a slow fire. You notice subtle gestures, a finger lightly tapping the rim of a goblet, a glance exchanged between two men across the table, a whispered word passed to a servant. These small acts carry meaning. The bishop's table is a stage, and every player knows their role. Outside these walls, the common folk live in very different conditions. The peasantry toils under heavy burdens, their lives marked by hardship and uncertainty. The nuns, live in silence and prayer, their days filled with labor and quiet devotion. Yet the bishops command vast resources and wield influence that shapes all these lives. In moments of solitude, a bishop might retire to a private chamber lined with shelves of manuscripts and scrolls. Here, amidst the flickering candlelight, he contemplates scripture, law, and the ever-shifting landscape of power. Decisions made here will echo for years to come. Still, despite the grandeur and intrigue, there is an awareness that earthly power is fleeting. Many bishops have seen their fortunes rise and fall, their legacies shaped as much by rivalries and politics as by piety. The Church itself is a living organism, ever adapting, ever evolving. As the night deepens, the last guests depart the hall. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn, and silence settles once more over stone and timber. You imagine the bishops resting behind thick walls, plotting the next move in a game as old as the institution itself. Meanwhile, in the cloister, the nuns prepare for night prayers. Their voices rise softly, a gentle counterpoint to the fading echoes of the feast. Two worlds intertwined, one of whispered strategies and lavish feasts, one of silent gardens and whispered prayers, both part of the vast, complex tapestry of medieval life. And as you close your eyes, you carry the quiet strength of the nuns and the intricate dance of power beyond the walls, both teaching you different lessons about faith, resilience, and the human spirit. A gentle reflection and farewell as the night deepens and the world outside grows still. You find yourself resting quietly within the soft embrace of history's whispers. The stone walls of the nunnery, once cold and unyielding, now seem warm. With the breath of countless silent prayers, the garden of forgotten plants, with its ancient secrets, offers a gentle reminder that even in the quietest places, life grows strong and healing. You carry with you the memory of Hildegard's visions, her music weaving light into darkness, her courage quietly shaping faith beyond walls, and the contrasting world of velvet robes and candlelit halls, where power and faith dance a delicate, timeless waltz. Both worlds, though different, are part of the same story, a story of human hope, endurance, and spirit. As you drift now toward rest, imagine the soft rustle of leaves in the secret garden, the distant echo of prayer, and the flicker of candlelight behind heavy doors. Let these images soothe you, a lullaby of history's gentle truths, guiding you toward peaceful sleep. Thank you for walking this quiet path with me today, exploring the lives woven into stone and silence, into gardens and grand halls. May your dreams be calm, your rest deep, and your heart light. Good night.